Something professors don't warn you about while training to be a teacher is that a good portion of your job is being a referee. The professors might mention it briefly in one class, but this realization usually happens on the job in a trial by fire situation. Students will argue about details most adults would consider trivial. But what I have found most amazing is how the students cannot move on until the argument is settled. And even then, reminders have to be given to simply move on. A classroom argument usually starts out small, but quickly escalates if not resolved soon. In my classroom, the top causes of arguments are pencils and places in line. Pencil arguments are mostly about ownership rights. Even though everyone has a yellow pencil, it's communal supplies. Or if the pencil has a good eraser. Line placement arguments, however, are about hierarchy. The closer you are to the front, the better place to be in line. The students in my classroom have a specific line order, alphabetical by last name. And their place in line is precious. If a student gets ahead of another student because they forgot their place in line, that is when I'll hear the telltale tone of arguing. Suddenly I hear, "No, you're behind her, and I am in front of you." The reply, "But I'm in front. I was yesterday." Then, "Miss Krissi, where is so-and-so supposed to go?" And if the protester was right, there is gloating, which again I have to shut down. But the point being, the students feel more important the closer they are to the front. It does not matter that the system is based on names only, not grades or merits. All that matters is that the closer they are to the front, the more important they feel. Which is why today's gospel lesson sounded oh so familiar to me. Jesus trying to teach, disciples bickering. Yet Jesus does a much better job at handling it than I ever would. His way is with much more patience and understanding and less sharp tones and heavy sighing. The disciples in today's gospel reading completely missed the lesson because they were concerned with status. The seemingly important part passes them by. Jesus will suffer, die, and rise again. This foretelling is important enough that Jesus has told them twice now, but it still hasn't stuck. Instead, the disciples focus on earthly matters and argue as to which of them is the greatest, completely not getting it. I enjoy the way Jesus calls them on it. What were you arguing about on the way? It is so teacher-like or parent-like. Not totally accusatory, but definitely making them aware you are aware of the issue. And true to form, they freeze because they know they're caught and are ashamed of what they have been caught doing. It is at this point the disciples seem most identifiable, most human. The disciples should be focusing on more divine matters, but these are as far from their mind as possible. But who hasn't at one point worried about status or if they are the most favored? My students do. I do. Being the favored one or the one with the most clout is flattering to our egos. It gives us an edge in an argument. It indicates prestige. And we think people listen to us more or admire us more. But all of these desires only make us more of this world and less of the kingdom of God. After he hears their arguing, Jesus settles the dispute by telling his disciples, "Whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all." This statement goes against any human instinct of social self-preservation, in which being the alpha is the prized position in society. Societies across the world have clear hierarchies, and the highest position has the most prestige. So what is Jesus talking about when he says the last must be first and the servant of all? It means putting away our selfish desires and letting holy wisdom shine through. In the Epistle of James, James writes about two wisdoms, earthly wisdom and the wisdom from above. In chapter 3, verse 17, it is written, "The wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy." In other words, we must fight against every human impulse. Instead of fighting, we must show peace and know when to back down. Being always right is no longer the goal. We must also be fair and just in our thoughts, words, and actions, removing the phrase, "do as I say and not as I do," from our vocabulary. For some, this wisdom and way of life come naturally, but for most people, choices have to be made to follow heavenly wisdom. The qualities of a good servant, besides being hardworking, is placing others' needs above theirs, and thus removing selfish desires. Now, I am not advocating stopping all self-care and ensuring that basic needs are not met, but rather the point being the societal pressures to be number one with a fancy car and designer clothes no longer need to be the goal, but rather ensuring everyone's needs are met in addition to ours. This week, we are hosting Families for Family Promise. In so doing, as a church together, we are helping others meet their basic needs of food and shelter. Many of us have signed up to aid in hosting, though hopefully none of us has entered a Best Family Promise dinner contest or Most Wonderful Evening Host contest. If there is such a contest, we, like the disciples, have missed the point. We volunteer to help raise another up rather than bring another down. And in so doing, we are being servants to these families. Jesus also uses the example of a child in his lesson. Children were not high-ranking officials, but instead one of the lower ranks in society, almost forgotten. By taking notice of the child and bringing the child into the conversation, Jesus was toppling established societal order. Instead of focusing on status and prestige, the focus is placing ourselves before others and living counter to what may come naturally out of our human desire. Jesus further instructs us as he says, "Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me welcomes not me, but the one who sent me." This verse is often interpreted literally as to whoever welcomes a child, but it can also be taken more broadly. Who else falls into this lower status category? What if this is a commandment to welcome all the outcast or insignificant members of society? If we reject the rejected, we are not following Jesus' teaching. If we focus on selfish desires and do not welcome the child, the sick, the stranger, we are not following human holy wisdom. Panhandlers, the homeless, the addicted, or mentally ill are often seen as inconveniences. People tend to look away when they come across someone in this category. They look away either out of shame, embarrassment, or disgust. I am not immune to the quick look down, and sometimes I've gone out of my way to avoid an interaction. Yet we, as Christians, are called not to look away, but face it head on, because we are to be servants to all, and help those whom society has cast aside. I have often wondered what this world would look like if we truly followed Jesus' teaching and removed all selfish desires. If everyone were fed, clothed, had shelter, and adequate medical care. If we worried less about appearances and what was rightfully ours, and more about working towards building a stronger, healthier community. If we worried less about being first or having the best, we are working towards the command to be servants to all. Because our focus would be so ourselves and others can equally have the best, not one having the best over another. It does seem an almost impossible goal to work towards, mostly because of the work required to change minds and create the infrastructure to support it. And Jesus realized this. He was, in addition to be fully God, fully human, after all. However, he showed us the way through kindness, mercy, love, and sometimes even anger, just anger. Therefore, because of its seemingly lack of possibility, the goal should not be forgotten. If we follow Jesus' example, and we do remember to be full of mercy and good fruits, and remember that we must be God's servants on earth, small steps can be made toward creating a world in which no one is first, and we are servants to all. Amen.